Monday, March 30th, 2020, 5:30 PM here at Mobridge City Hall for our special city council meeting. Few things, there's a lot of us on Zoom. There's a lot of us on, a few of us on the phone. So if anyone wants to discuss, if anyone in the audience wants to have anything to say, I'm gonna ask you guys to come up to the podium, things like that. For the people following along on Zoom and the internet, I will ask before we talk, state your name before we ask a question. So with that being said, Heather, call the roll, please.
Mound,
Here.
Landrieu,
He's on there. He's muted.
he's gonna have to unmute.
Jeff, unmute yourself so we can hear you.
Here he goes.
Okay, we'll come back to him. so-
Reichert,
Here.
O'Connell,
Here.
Yellow Boy,
Yep.
Carlson,
Where did he go?
Randy, if you can hear me, you also have to unmute.
Don't see him on the list.
Possible to wave at him.
Well, he was here, but now his picture's gone, so.
Yeah, he's not on the list right now.
All right, let me just call him here.
Jeff, can you hear us? Now I can. Okay. So can you answer here for the roll call? Here. Okay. We're just waiting on one more.
Can I just put you on the phone? Oh, oh, okay. Okay, I'm gonna put you on speaker, okay? All right.
Okay. So you got Randy marked down here? Okay. All right. Up next, we have second reading of ordinance number 982, an ordinance of the city of Mobridge, South Dakota, declaring a health emergency and limiting public gatherings within the city and within 1 mile of the city limits. I guess I'll just start right out and say there's been lots of discussion between the first reading and the second reading. And I think I'll just go ahead and start with the first part right now. We'll get that out of the way. And that'd be the addition of child cares, daycare facilities. There was lots of discussion on that versus on the 10 people. We do have a letter from Dr. Marciano, for all intents and purposes, stating that daycare facilities are necessary for the hospital and for emergency personnel. So, is there any, I'm gonna open that up for discussion. So, does anybody wanna discuss that? Does anybody have anything to say? Anybody wanna make a statement? Okay, please come up to the podium.
I am here, as some of you may know, Christy Ralph. I own the daycare center here in town. I am licensed through the state. And so I just wanted to make just a couple statements on what we're trying to do as a business to keep running for the family so they can continue to work during this pandemic. The total square footage of the facility is 2,400 square feet. So there's a lot of time that we have some kids in one side of the building and then some in a different section in the building. So we're able to have 10 or less in certain areas throughout the day. We have activities going on, so it's never just all 22 kids that I have enrolled currently in one spot. And so what we've been going off of, and a lot of our protocols and cleaning that we've done already have been alongside of the CDC and Department of Health. So we've got the bleach to water solution. We're cleaning from the time we open until the time we end. I did decide last week, I think it was, to close at 5:10 instead of 5:30, just so we can hit up the light switches, the door handles, things like that, that we don't necessarily clean every day. But services are wiped down, I don't know how many times a day, 15 maybe, I don't know. And so when kids nap, they have their own cots to nap on. Those are disinfected every day. I have a washer and a dryer in the facility where we wash blankets. If kids are sick, we make sure to wash them right after they leave. I'm just trying to, the only time that the kids would be over 10 would be during snack time or lunch. But we can make a change to that if that's what we should be doing. But we're not allowing kids into the center if they have a fever over 100, if they have a bad cough, trouble breathing, diarrhea, things like that. These are already protocols that we had into place prior to COVID-19 coming into play. We're also asking parents the kids should come back after they've been free from whatever illness they had for at least 24 hours with no medication. Some things that we could do to keep my business running, I'm going to ask parents to take temps at home prior to even bringing to the building. And then we are also taking temps throughout the day. Let's see here. I did get a couple of, actually several emails from child care licensing, not stating that we have to close, but that the state is recommending that if we remain open to follow CDC and Department of Health guidelines, which we're already doing. I've talked to my staff. I have one staff member here that at any time if they feel unsafe or if there is a positive case here within the county, then we'll take drastic measures at that point. But at this point, I do feel we're doing what we need to do to stay open. I did take a look at the mitigation through the department for CDC, just about making sure, again, that if kids are sick, please don't bring them. I also did get approval through child care licensing since schools have shut down to take on 20% more of my license capacity, which is 30 children. So the state is clearly saying if you can remain open and you can do what the CDC and Department of Health are recommending, there's no need for closure. And so I guess I just ask to help these families out. Just please consider that we keep this daycare center running. I don't know what more we can do. The public is always welcome to come see the center. I just ask after hours. If these parents were that concerned about the safety of the kids and their health in the daycare, I think they would stop bringing them. I think that's all I have. I just hope that you guys all consider that I can keep running.
Okay, here's, and I missed it because apparently we're in stereo, and I apologize. I know some of the council reps have gone to look at your facility. So I guess, and my concern was, and I'm just gonna put it out there for everybody, and I've told everybody in this room, my concern is the 12 and the issue of 12 or 10, and however we separate that. And I'll just ask, did you state earlier that you will have the ability to separate or keep separate, or?
Yeah, this is actually no different than this
Okay.
COVID-19.
Okay, because, like I said, and Dr. Marciano would call me, we visited, he did issue a letter. The only thing I'm gonna pitch to this council is not only your daycare, but every daycare.
I'm only speaking on behalf
Okay,
of
no,
registered or
That's-
licensed.
And that's fine, I understand that, so, but I just, in case anyone was confused, I'm looking at this as a daycare, whether it's your daycare, or whether it's an in-home daycare, and things like, that's gonna be up to the parent, because the health officer said that daycare is a necessity for the individuals and the crews at the hospital, so that's kinda why I'm entertaining it. But I guess, so that's my opinions. I'll open that up for anyone else if they wanna say anything.
I actually spoke to 3 other daycares in town. And I've just kind of talked with them a little bit about what the CDC was recommending. And they're all basically doing what's recommended with the cleaning and the bleach solution, and they have smaller numbers than normal, and I mean, I wanted to speak with all of them and not just the daycare center, so that when we came here, I could say that, yes, it is getting done at more than just one daycare. These daycare providers are very conscientious of these kids. Daycare isn't just daycare, they're family. They're like second parents to kids. And I trust my daycare provider's opinion. If she says, no, we're doing good, we're cleaning, we're keeping them separate as much as possible, then I trust her that that's what they're doing. And if she were to ever be concerned at all about the health of any of the kids, I know she would shut down. So I think that the daycares are very conscientious of what's going on, and they love these kids, so they want them to stay healthy as well.
Any other discussion, comments? Jeff, Tony, Randy? I just called you three guys because you're on the computer, making sure you're hearing. Okay. So on the issue of daycares, and we've all talked about this to a great extent last week, so on that, and it looks like we would want to amend the ordinance in 7A to include childcare centers? Okay, sorry, go ahead. Come up here, John, please.
Thank you.
Just hold on. I'm gonna apologize to everybody. I'm taking this very slow, very mundane, because we're talking about some very serious stuff here, so, all right, now.
Yes, and I appreciate the thoughtful consideration and the discussion. My name is John Ayub. I represent the hospital here in town. I am also supportive of the daycares remaining open for the reasons that were outlined. I've spoken with a number of you already. I have spoken personally with the Secretary of the Department of Health and received the guidance that I shared with you, Mr. Mayor, over the phone, that the state has no problem with the daycare staying open to help with the essential critical infrastructure workers in the community. I would ask, and I don't know the legal ramifications, but I think it would be in the best interest of the community for the council to consider this as an interpretation of the ordinance or as a separate ordinance to address this item specifically. But the idea of amending the ordinance and then having to wait additional time for the original ordinance to go into effect, I feel is a public health risk, and I would hope that you could move forward without delaying the implementation of the original ordinance.
Okay. Rick, you've got something to say.
Yeah, just to address John, if we dealt with daycare under a whole new ordinance, we'd have to start over with that ordinance. There'd have to be 2 readings and a publication before it becomes effective. We can amend at this point in time on the second reading. If it passes, then it's published on Wednesday and it becomes effective. So it's quicker than to do a whole different deal on the daycare.
Sure. The legal aspect's up to you. I just wanted to check moving more expeditiously.
Okay, any more discussion on the daycares? So if there is none, I would look for a motion to either amend or reject.
I'll make a motion to amend ordinance 982 to include child daycares in 7A.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion?
Hang on, is that all of them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, my thoughts are yeah, we're not gonna get into the inspection and none of that. It's gonna be an all or a nothing, and that's gonna be left up to the parents and the daycare providers to make that best decision. That's my thoughts. Okay,
Okay.
any more discussion? Okay, call the roll on that one, please.
Landrieu. Reichert,
Yes.
O'Connell,
Yes.
Yellow Boy,
Yep.
Carlson. Mound,
Yes.
Did we lose Randy?
must have.
No, he's on here, he's just muted. Randy, you have to unmute yourself.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so that part has carried. I guess since we are going to discuss a bunch of issues right here, I guess you guys, myself included, have had a bunch of changes and proposed changes thrown at us in a very short time. I'm very, I guess I'll say very cautious, very hesitant. I'm gonna go ahead and put my viewpoints out. Excuse me, on the first reading of the ordinance, and I haven't really changed my viewpoint, but what I'm looking at first and foremost is flattening the curve, limiting people, that type of stuff. I realize we have a very broad ordinance before us. We have a lot of things to consider, and I mentioned that to you guys earlier. At our special meeting that we didn't have any motions at, there's gonna be a lot of things, even beyond this council's going to need to consider. So in the short time, and I believe the individuals are here, our attorney's obviously here. So that being my thoughts, my positions at this current point in time, I'm gonna open this up for discussion. On the amendments, it looks like on 5 and 6 within the current ordinance. So that would either be you guys or members of the council, or,
We're at a disadvantage.
okay,
We don't have a copy of the latest revision.
Well, I'll start off with what's in number 5. What is being proposed to be changed in number 5 is, instead of just saying that all other retail service businesses in which more than 10 people are gathered and permitted to gather in the facility are directed to close and cease operations. That is being proposed to be changed to adding where it is not possible to maintain physical separation of at least 6 feet between persons. Basically, what we were doing before is considering a 900 square foot building the same as a 12,000 square foot building, and saying that both of them could only have 10 people. This would allow these larger businesses that have more square footage and more room for people to be spread out to have more than 10 people in the building at a time.
okay, so my question is who brought, I realize this came from you, Rick, in the amended ordinances, but I guess my question is gonna be is who brought this?
Adam Hayes and Jeff Pye.
Okay, podium, please.
Hello. I'm Adam Hayes with Mobridge Hardware. After considering the first reading, we did have some concerns with it, so we are here to address you today about those concerns. First off, I'd like to thank you for addressing COVID-19 and doing something about it. I think that is good for our community. I understand the amendment for number 5 for the 10 people or less, but I am recommending that you follow Christy Nome's, the governor's recommendations, and also the CDC of the 6 foot or less. Like you mentioned, Jade, if you have, like here, we're pretty tight with more than 10 people. You put the same 10 people in 10, 20, 30,000 square feet, you can spread out and safely still abide by the recommendations of the CDC and also Christy Nome. So I did propose to put in there, we're physically separated of at least 6 feet or more. We have done what we can to keep people 6 feet apart. At Mobridge Hardware, we put a table in front of the checkouts, so the customer and the cashier remain at a further distance, and the customer cannot come any closer. We put a barrier at the paint counter to keep customers 6 feet away, put signs on the door and throughout the store, asking customers to remain 6 feet away. We've also put signs on the counter, the doors, all over the store, asking them to wash their hands. We provide rubber gloves. If somebody feels they need to wear rubber gloves, they are available. We've done a few things with Ace Corporate as well to enhance the online purchasing and the curbside pickup. So we're doing what we can. Less than an hour ago, I got directions on how to do a keyless credit card reading, so they don't have to do the PIN pad or the signature. So we're doing what we can to follow the guidelines and best protect our community. With that, we also need to protect ourselves. 10 people in our building and facility in May would cause a very substantial financial problem. I have no problem at all following the guidelines of 6 feet or more and keeping people 6 feet apart. We've done what we can to do that, and I anticipate doing a few more things as things come up to keep those barriers in place. But for us anyways, January, February, March, we lose money. We don't even break even. We need a good spring to catch back up and break even. So I'm just urging you to, first and foremost, put the health aspect in line, but second off, realize the financial impact that this is having on the community. And please address that accordingly as well. So I believe if we did 6 feet or more, I think that is a good way to address the health of the citizens of Mobridge and also help sustain the financial impact it'll have on the community. With that being said, the grocery stores and the dollar stores did not have to have the 10 people or less. So runnings, even though my competition would be a problem for them, they have 10 people, a couple people inside, they're breaking the ordinance. Same here, we've got a greenhouse outside here in a couple of months, plants coming in, people are spaced out. We've got all our soil outside, we definitely try to keep people apart the best that we can, but 10 people or less in one facility would be a financial burden on Mobridge Harbor.
Okay, and I'll read what was read in the first reading. All other retail and service businesses in which more than 10 people are gathered or permitted to gather in the facility are directed to close and cease operations. I realize, and don't take, I'm not saying I realize this is a huge economic hit. It's gonna be a huge economic hit for the city, regardless, on our side. I realize it's gonna be a huge hit on your side. And again, like I said, where I'm coming from, and I just said that earlier on the daycare things, where do I draw the line between the number of people versus the number of people that can get sick versus everybody being 6 feet apart? Because again, my whole intention with this is to keep crowds and to keep human interaction to a level that doesn't overwhelm the hospital. I mean, so that's where I'm at first and foremost. That's my opinion. And I see you guys have yours, as well. So as we try to draw all this stuff together, where do we come together, and how do we address that? And I told you kind of what I think. You told me what you think. So.
Yep, so
Go
I'm
ahead.
Jeff Pyatt, I own Riverside Home Furnishings with my wife. When I read the first ordinance, there was a problem with it. I couldn't find a solution. I think we found a solution to that. The solution that we proposed and visited with Rick about, and we visited with all the council members about, is to be consistent with the CDC guidelines that have been put forth, because the number 10 has been arbitrarily pulled out of context. And so we can still fulfill the requirements or the guidelines from the CDC and from Governor Nome and still flatten the curve. We're not asking to push a bunch of people in, and my answer would be a little bit different than Adam's, because our retail stores are different. So what we need, I don't think it's just a financial aspect. It's we can provide that level of safety. We all have protocols in place. Every business in town has a protocol of some sort. Some are weaker than others and some are stronger than others. Some will scare you to death when you walk in. Some will scare you because you don't see anything happening. So there's a lot of that variety in there, but it's consistent. The proposed amendment that you have before you is consistent with, I think, what you're trying to do, and it helps us maintain business somewhat as usual with restrictions in there. It doesn't penalize us, like Jade said, because we have a larger facility versus somebody who doesn't. The number 10 is arbitrary, and it was black and white in the first reading. It's black and white. There are no exceptions in there according to that. unless they're specifically stated, as I read the ordinance.
On which part? So we're in number 5 in the first part that was presented, yeah, effective, okay, all other retail and service businesses in which more than 10 people are gathered, permitted to gather in a facility are directed to close and cease operations. So yeah, that's pretty,
It's pretty black and white.
That's
So
pretty
that would
black and
employ, it be employees as well as customers. So those of us who have larger entities that I have probably 6 or 7 full-time employees that are in our retail store on a regular basis, 98% of the time, 95% of the time. Do we need to step people out the back door in order to maintain the number 10? And if so, why is that the magic number when the context through the guidelines isn't consistent with that? That's the reason.
Okay.
Yep.
I guess, the magic number of 10, I mean, I can ask Rick on that one, but then also going back to the first part of the black and white, no more than 10, that's very enforceable through law enforcement. I mean,
If they stand at the door and they count, yes, sir.
okay, Sean, did he leave?
No,
He's hiding.
Oh, you're, okay, I'm sorry, you were in
he's
perfect line.
maintaining the 6-foot distance.
Okay, I'm just, like I said, you know, and I've kind of made my points on the numbers. I guess if Rick wants to, you know, wherever we got the magic number of 10, but I think, and I'm just, you know, debating a little bit with you here, but how do we put that on an enforcement issue with Chief Madison on how many people are, you know, we're allowed, what, 6 square feet or
Yep.
or whatever, so yeah, and I agree, Jeff, you got a huge business down there. Your business is huge.
So
But-
when,
Part of the problem I see is the dollar stores can have 100 people in there, but we can have 10. It's from a safety standpoint,
Okay,
that isn't consistent.
okay,
Where the 6 feet or more would be a more consistent way to keep everybody's distance.
I
okay. from
have
this-
to agree with that aspect because I'm just going to use North Side Flowers as an example because it's one of the smaller storefronts on Main Street. 10 people in that business, you're almost going to be shoulder to shoulder. But 10 people in even the pet store or any of the other larger businesses, there's going to be less of a risk there as long as they're staying 6 feet apart. And with that, we're going to have to realize that we're going to have to put a little bit of trust into our business owners and the community. And the business owners and the employees are going to have to work to enforce these rules as well. And the community needs to realize that this is for their benefit, for their good. We're trying to flatten the curve and make things safer for everyone in Mobridge. And not take offense if they're asked to step farther apart from somebody or if they would be willing to move just a little bit to maintain a little bit better of a distance.
Okay,
can I add one more thing?
go ahead.
So it's not just about Ace and it's not just about Riverside or other entities. There are other ones that, Real Tough, right outside on the 1 mile buffer, they probably have more than 10 employees in their business at one time. Which ones do they send home? Because that's the way the first one is written. Again, more support. I don't know how many people Valley, Dakota Glass has in theirs, but again, if we just start to look at the different businesses, some of us have enough employees. I mean, we can't have customers, and we gotta send some of them home. So again, the 6-foot buffer, to go back to your question though, I believe it was Curtis and I that had the discussion about the numbers, and you said, well, how do maybe we could just come up with a magic formula, certain square footage based on a 6-foot bubble, how many people can we get in there, and then we got this magic number that we put on the door or the wall, figuratively speaking. That would be a whole lot more difficult, I think, to enforce than just to say 6 feet, be wise and smart about it, the same as it would be to come and say, okay, how many people are in your store right now, and do they count if they're in the back room in the office, or if they're in here or there? It just seems to be a better solution to me.
And a safer solution. Because right now, it's, anybody that sells groceries or the pharmacy is excluded. So you could have 100 people in any place in town that sells groceries or pharmacies, which
Well-
would still be,
But Payless is complying pretty good too on their 6 foot and their, I mean,
but as this reads, you could have 300 people
Right.
in one of those buildings, and they would be compliant by the ordinance as it was written in first writing. So what we're asking for is something that is better for the safety of everyone, and fair for everyone. We are looking out as people's health concerns first, but we're also trying to be fair from one business to another. I understand that might be a little harder to enforce, but I think it would be better for people's safety to make sure they're 6 feet apart rather than a certain number in a room or a building or a facility or a property ID number or whatever it may be.
Okay.
As it's written, it says facility. Facility, by definition of facility, is a little gray as well.
Okay, do you have anything else I'm just gonna open it up for discussion.
Thank you.
No, I'm fine, yeah,
Thank you,
thank you,
Adam.
Adam.
thank you.
So I'll just start down the list. Anybody on the council have anything to add?
Yeah, I do. This is Tony.
Okay, Tony?
Say, when we first started this ordinance, Rick wrote it for us, and we had the first reading. And when it comes to second reading, this is where all this comes about, where people have it, where businesses or whoever has a problem, they bring it to the council. Okay, well, for me, that first reading, when they said stay at home, means stay at home. And when the businesses were supposed to be closed, I said, good, because of one thing. You're supposed to stay at home. And when we look out for the people that elected us in this community, and we have their health and welfare that we're supposed to look after. And this community has a lot of retirees, older people in it, and they kind of look up to us. So the almighty dollar plays more role in, I guess, our members in our community. So what I'm saying is that if we're going to start changing stuff, then I guess if Rick's going to rewrite the whole thing, then I guess if he's going to add all this, or we're going to have another meeting, I guess let's get it done, I guess.
I don't think that the whole thing is being rewritten. It's just clarifying what is considered acceptable. When I think of 10 people gathering, I think of 10 people gathering for a social event or something like that. More like 6A was addressing. Like get-togethers, family get-togethers, birthday parties, what have you, book clubs. That's what I think of with 10 people gathering. I feel like this 6 feet of separation between people is a better measure, because that, if they cannot keep 6 feet up between each person, they shouldn't have 10 people in their store or at their gathering anyway.
Randy, Jeff, you guys hearing all this? Okay, Randy? Anyone else from the council have anything?
Well,
Okay,
when I was talking to Mr. Pyatt about, like the square footage and stuff, I mean, a guy could get pretty much a rough estimate and kind of figure out what your capacity would be, I guess, to some extent. It wouldn't have to be, you know what I mean? It wouldn't have to be the council says you can have so much per square. But I mean, you could kind of get an idea how many people you could put in that building, you know, for that size building. I don't think it's an altogether totally bad idea. And you know, and make sure they keep their bubble or their 6 foot perimeter.
But then again, we kind of put that on Sean to have to go in and count heads.
Well, the business could self-police too, you know. I
Right.
know Mr. Pyatt would police himself very well, because I mean, from what he said.
But I'm talking with enforcement of this.
Well, yeah, but
I mean, you can see, you have a general judge of whether people are 6 feet apart. And you just have to, you have to ask them, and people are gonna have to comply. I mean, you guys, when people are asking you, these business owners and these employees, they're doing it for your own good. It's not that we want to do this, it's because that we have to. I mean, this COVID-19 is a very, very serious deal, and it's been fatal for thousands of people in the United States. And without complying to the 6-foot rule, it doesn't matter if you have 10 people or not in a room. It's not gonna matter.
Rick, did you have something?
Yes, please.
You had asked the question where the number 10 came from. It came from the March 16 declaration from the White House. You should not have more than 10 people in a gathering. And so that's where it came
Okay.
from. It was also, when I looked at the Municipal Attorneys Association has a group that we interact and have comments, and just about all the communities that adopted ordinances or resolutions to deal with these dealt with the 10 in a group. So that's where the 10 came from. If you want to do a different number, that's fine.
Is there other cities that have adopted like a 6-foot deal or kind of done something like what we're probably proposing to do? that you can
There
press
are, yeah, there's different municipalities that have talked about having a 6-foot space between people. The ones that I saw under this Municipal Attorneys Association group, those entities did not create ordinances. They did resolutions saying, we recommend you do this. Well, it's meaningless because the White House and Kristi Noem have already recommended you do it. So those communities did not adopt an ordinance that they could enforce like we are. There was only 2 that I know of that did that. Aberdeen was one of them. The other was Hill City. Everybody else that I saw, and I suppose I probably read a dozen or so ordinances, are almost identical to what we have here.
To the current state that we have here?
No,
Or the
no,
previous state?
The first draft,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, the first draft and whatever is, in my opinion, that's enforceable. You know, when you start talking about the 10 people, so, that's, you know, like I said, we have more time.
Okay, good. Thought Zoom was gonna cut us off.
We were worried about getting cut off of Zoom, Jeff. You're good, so.
Can I just ask a question, Rick? In your finding of that number 10, where it came from, did you also see the unless, the qualifiers that came along behind that? It's a limit of 10 people unless they're able to maintain a 6-foot distance between them.
Yeah, I didn't see
Yep. So that you're accurate, and I'm not trying to argue legalities, I certainly am not a lawyer. I just know that that's where the number 10 has come from, it's been repeated, but there are exception clauses that have come down from the CDC and from the governor. Unless you can do this and this and this, and then you don't have to abide by that number 10. That's the way that appears.
Okay, Tony and Jeff and Randy, did you guys hear what Rick said from across the room?
Yep.
Okay. Any questions, comments, input? Okay, so I guess I've kind of said where I'm coming from. I guess what's the council thinking on number 5?
I think that the 6 foot is the best way to go about it.
I agree.
Because, like you said, you've got stores out there that can't handle 2 people, let alone 6. You can't, some of them, you put 10 people in there, and like you said, are touching hands. In the bigger stores, there's plenty of room. I think we need to follow the rules and say 6 foot. That's my suggestion. I make that as a motion.
I second that.
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. Is there any more discussion? Okay, hang on, can you read that back?
Moved by Mound, moved by O'Connell, second by Mound, to include the exemption in number 5 of where it's, or to add where it's not possible to maintain physical separation of at least 6 feet between persons. That would be in addition to the first reading. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Did you hear that? Okay. So is there any more discussion on the motion and the second? Okay, guess hearing none, I'm gonna ask Heather to call the roll.
Reichert,
Yes.
O'Connell.
Yes.
Yellow Boy,
Yep.
Carlson. Mound,
Yes.
Landrieu.
Okay, and again, I'm apologizing to everyone for taking it so slow. If you're bored, that's fine, deal with it. I get to run the meeting. I'm sorry, I should not have said that. Okay, I'll move us into number 6. The reason I'm taking this very, very slow is we're dealing with very serious issues here, so. We'll get down to number 6. The first reading was the prohibitions and closures in this order do not apply to the following businesses. So number A is places of public accommodation that offer food and beverages for off-site consumption, including grocery stores, food markets, retail and service businesses in which less than 10 people are gathered or permitted to gather in the facility, pharmacies, drugstores, and food pantries, other than any portion of such businesses which would be subject to the requirements in paragraph number 1. Okay, following along, the proposed change, well, it's not a proposed change, it is just submitted by the attorney, and I'll just read it. Number 6, effective 12 a.m. on April 2nd, 2020, it shall be unlawful for any person, entity, organization, or club to participate in or permit a communal gathering as defined herein, which prohibition shall be governed by the following terms. Subsection A, for purposes of this ordinance, a communal gathering in any indoor or outdoor gathering of people not specifically identified above, subject to the exceptions and clarifications below, where 10 or more people are located in an enclosed area where there is not clearly marked an identifiable space to have physical separation of at least 6 feet between persons who are not immediate family members or members of the same household, including but not limited to office space, business facility, building or similar confined space, single-family residence, residential apartment unit, livestock sales locations, and rodeo grounds. Okay, that is the second part. Hang on one second, Rick, the computer screen's flashing at me, so Heather can just keep the Zoom going here, but.
Okay, that number 6 that you just read, that was a whole new paragraph that I put in there and just happened to stick it in that particular area because of the way I worded it, it was fit there for the spot to be located within the ordinance. The purpose of that was over the weekend I got thinking about, you know, this whole thing where I had in the first reading we had retail and service. You couldn't have more than 10 people, and I thought we're missing things that may not be defined as retail or service. Like we've got a livestock auction barn. I don't know if that's retail or it's service, but we're not dealing with it. The rodeo grounds, we're not dealing with it in the first ordinance. So I stuck this in there basically to catch everything else. If there's more than 10 people there, then you need to have an identifiable location so you can keep them 6 feet apart. It's kind of a catch-all for everybody that's not retail or service. That's basically all that one does.
Okay, now was this proposed by anybody?
No, that was
Okay.
just something I thought of over the weekend
Okay.
to cover the areas that we hadn't covered in the original ordinance.
My thing is with the residential apartment unit, so that means like an apartment building in town, you're covering that as well then?
Yeah, that would be covered if they're gonna have 10 people or more in an enclosed space.
Like a lobby or something?
Yeah, if they got like a playroom or a, you know, place where they can gather, they can't gather there unless you can space them out 6 feet. Won't keep them out of their rooms because that's not in an enclosed space, but if they have some sort of a communal area where they meet, if there's gonna be more than 10 people, they gotta do the 6 feet. That's basically what that one
So
would be.
so what you're saying is, okay, if I'm understanding this right, and the last word is rodeo ground, so if this ordinance is still clipping along, at the rodeo, they need to make sure everyone is 6 feet away from everybody, okay?
Yeah, or if they have an event other than the rodeo. That was,
Okay.
I was thinking this is gonna be over by July, we'll repeal it. But if there's some sort of a fundraiser event or something out there in May or June, it'll apply to them, that's
For
why.
what it's worth, Rick, I'm waiting on the day I get to call the special meeting for the resolution to,
That would be great, yeah.
yeah. Okay. Sean, have you had a chance to kind of go over this? I mean, you feel like that's good? Okay. All right, any other questions or comments or discussion from the council?
I do think this is a good idea because we don't know how long this is gonna be.
Okay,
So if they have a sale, Rick, that'll affect the sale too, then they'll have to distance themselves or do it via online, I imagine then. Just, I'm sorry I'm bringing this stuff up, but
no,
Yeah,
now's the
no,
time,
that's a good
Curtis.
question, and that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking is that, they've got an area there that they can sit in. So they're just gonna have to, 6 feet here, 6 feet here, and spread them out, and if they get too many, they're gonna have to just do like we do here. Ask people to get online and do the auction that way. But yeah, when I was thinking through all that, I was thinking, well, they're not really retail and not really service, it's kind of a hybrid type situation, but they have the same risks as do these guys and everybody else, so I figured they should really be,
in the same,
in the same, them and anybody else that we haven't really fit into all of our other little niches.
Okay, well, and this is coming into my head now, and again, as while we're standing here, going back up to the last portion on the, where it is not possible to maintain physical separation of at least 6 persons, and I realize that it's carried unanimous, but again, the question that popped into my head now, and we have not talked about it, but it has come up, is hair salons. So if that beautician cannot keep 6 feet between them and that person they're cutting on, are they effectively closed by this ordinance? I mean, not to mean to put you on the spot, but.
If they have more than 10 people in there, we don't see, and those folks, we don't have the 6 feet. If they've got less than 10 people in a facility, the way this
Okay.
was done, they don't have to stay 6 feet. Maybe something you want to do, but that's not what it says.
Okay,
If they got more than 10 people in the hair salon, then they gotta do the 6 feet.
okay,
by appointment.
Oh, yeah.
okay, go ahead, Randy. Did you hear that?
No.
They're direct contact with the people that they're
Yeah.
either cutting hair or waxing eyebrows.
Are we
Okay.
gonna prohibit contact with them? Is that what he's asking?
No, he's
He's asking
saying
about
because
contact.
they're direct contact, they're not gonna be,
He's
even
asking,
if there's less than 10 people in that room, they're gonna be touching each other.
They're just gonna have,
But the PPEs and stuff are protective equipment, I imagine.
they can, they're gonna have to make the decision what they want for a risk to themselves, and also their customers are gonna have to make a decision, do I need to get my hair cut? I've told my wife, she isn't getting her hair cut for a while, she doesn't get it colored either. So, that's just it.
Well-
If you're in that kind of a business, you're gonna have to accept that risk.
okay, and again, I'm looking at it not from that risk to that individual, but who else are these individuals gonna come in contact with? So when you start getting away from that number 10 to however many people you can fit in your facility or a daycare facility or whatever. So I'm just telling you guys how I see it. And all of a sudden you've got that many more little fires out there that you're gonna have to deal with. And it's all gonna come right back to John at the hospital, so.
And that's exactly what the council has to deal with. You have to weigh the economics of what this is doing to compare that to the health and safety of the residents of town.
Okay.
You're gonna have contact at the hair salon, you're gonna have contact at the daycare, you're gonna have contact when hand cash to whoever I'm buying groceries from. I mean, there's gonna be contact, there's gonna be some risk unless you shut everybody down. You know, that's just the reality of it. So you gotta weigh economics versus safety and try to find some sort of a happy medium, because we can't get by with going all one way or all the other under the circumstances, so.
And they have to take some responsibility on themselves, the individuals.
You know,
Individual, if John and I wanna sit and BS and drink a beer right side by side, that's up to him and I. And we have to look at that at our point, not this point, because there's individuals that are gonna do this, so.
I think I would respectfully disagree. You guys have taken this emergency action for the public health.
Yes.
Because there are people who are willing to take that risk and sit side by side and have
Right.
beer. And
John, would you come
And
up
that's
here?
why we closed it.
I'm sorry, I just,
sorry, I was trying my best not to weigh in on this, because I respect all the business owners in this community, and I know that these times are very troubling and it's tough, but it seems like there has to be a standard. You guys came together, you are passing an emergency ordinance for the public well-being, and it can't be up to individual people to take responsibility and say, oh, I make this choice. Given the opportunity, some people will make poor choices, and that's why we're talking about shutting down bars and doing some of these other things. I think that I applaud your efforts to take a principled stand and focus on public health recommendations instead of arbitrary numbers. But I think if you want to go that direction, you have to be consistent. I mean, our dentists are shut down, our eye doctors are shut down. I would argue those are more important than our hairdressers, but I don't have any hair, so I'm not really in a position to be credible on that. But you are taking a very big step here in the interest of public health, and I don't think that can be lost. There are certain exceptions that you can make, but if you make too many exceptions, the ordinance doesn't mean anything.
I think most of the hair shops have already closed down on
Yeah.
their own,
Yeah,
on their
they're-
own purposes.
You can't go in unless you have an appointment. And they're not allowing anyone to walk in, not even to make an appointment. You have to call.
no.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get back to that. I just thought of that while Rick was talking. So,
One final comment on that topic. Because we have, if you're gonna have less than 10 people in your facility, no matter what it is, you're okay. If that turns into a situation where it's being abused, it doesn't stop us from having an emergency meeting. There's a bill pending in the legislature today. Today's veto day. It's the last day the legislature is gonna be there. The South Dakota Municipal League has proposed a new ordinance or a new state statute to be adopted, and I don't know, as I came over here, I hadn't heard, that says that a municipality for emergency purposes can enact an ordinance on one reading. Only one reading, doesn't even have to be published, and it becomes effective. So if we get into a situation, on 24-hour notice, we can call a special meeting, enact an ordinance dealing with a hot spot if we find a problem, and it becomes effective immediately. So within a day, we can deal with it law if this goes through. And like I say, I don't know if it will or not. I don't think our governor liked it, but we'll have to see what our legislature does and see if she'll then not veto it. So.
okay, so that's, John, sorry, didn't mean for you to have to weigh in one way or another, but I believe I've kind of been echoing that with the numbers and that type of stuff. So, if you guys wanna take a look at 6A, any more discussion or comments on that? Because also bear in mind what Rick said on this emergency ordinance, that is not in law yet, so. And right now, the only thing we're getting out of the state and federal people are recommendations and guidance. What we're trying to put here is a law. We're trying to get enforcement from our chief of police. So, is there any more comments or discussion? Yes, Jeff.
I'm just, this is a hard thing to talk about, I know, like
you hear that, Rick?
I do feel like I feel like funerals would fall under this 6A that's being proposed. It's a communal gathering.
Jeff Landrill's asking about, funeral gathering.
Be the same, whether it's funeral or otherwise, it's.
That would fall under
That's one
6A?
That would fit into this situation here. If it's, gonna be where 10 or more are located in close space, they gotta be able to separate them by 6 feet.
Okay. And again, did you hear that, Jeff?
Yeah, say that, I didn't hear that.
Okay, Rick, can I get you to do your answer again? So I repeat it right. Rick will come up to the microphone.
Jeff, that's one that I hadn't even thought about, but that would fall under that new proposed paragraph 6, where if there's gonna be 10 people or more in the facility, or more than 10 people in the facility itself, then they're gonna have to keep them 6 feet apart, just, so that's one of those catch-all type, just like the rodeo grounds or the sale barn, things that don't fit into the retail or service industry, although that may be service, I don't know, but we just soon cover it, so.
Did you catch that, Jeff?
Yep, I just wanted to mention that, so
Okay,
thank you.
okay. Well, and again, we're looking, yes. Okay, well, I'll back you up, and if I get out of line, someone else, point it out. What Rick had said on the haircut, and your question was 6 feet between persons, but according to Rick, it is not in violation of the ordinance unless there's more than 10 people in the facility. So, if you're getting your hair cut with you and the beautician, according to Rick and his interpretation, or the barber, the stylist, the haircut person is not in violation of an ordinance. So, but there again, that kind of goes against everything that we're, trying to accomplish, so. Did you catch all that? Okay, okay, thank you. So back to 6, and again, I think some of this stuff should be addressed, like an apartment unit, some of those types of things, but then you start getting into rodeo grounds and things like that, your enforcement becomes, in my opinion, my thoughts, your enforcement starts to become not feasible, so you're just down to recommendations and guidelines. That's my thoughts. Any discussion? Sean,
What if somebody wants to,
come to the podium.
well, I got somebody that wants to speak, but they can't unmute Zoom and speak.
Can you speak for them, or?
There's a little microphone in the bottom left corner. It should be red with a line through it. If you just click on that, that will unmute you. After you're done speaking, you can hit that and it'll mute you again.
Do we know who's trying to speak?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm seeing if they can function though. I can call them and put them on speaker.
That would probably be the quickest.
Yep.
Okay, this is Jody Madison, and I just want to go back to the salon issue. As a nurse,
Hang on, Jody. We're turning you up.
okay, we're dealing with a virus that is easily spread through aerosol and through contact. So it's airborne and it's by direct contact. And you're putting somebody in a chair less than 12 inches from somebody for anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours. And I cannot think of a more opportune time for that virus to spread than at that moment. Now, so it goes from the client to the hairdresser, and in between, they're gonna sanitize everything, but now they're carrying it around and they don't even know it. So then they're exposing the next client and the next client. No matter how good their sanitation methods are, it's an airborne virus. So to allow that to continue is just, I think we're just asking for trouble with that.
Okay, Jody, I do agree with that. I don't know that anyone on the council is probably gonna disagree with that. But I guess I'm just gonna ask Rick right now, where would we put that in this ordinance as a closed business?
I was reading today on, Gene,
I'm listening, Randy.
yeah, I was reading today on the news where there's a person cutting hair that did catch the virus and, she's sick now from it,
Okay,
so I don't know.
If that's the case, she exposed everybody that had come in there now.
okay,
To answer your question, Gene, under paragraph 1 of the ordinance, where you're closing down restaurants, food courts, bars, those sorts of things, we just add in, define hairdressers.
okay.
That'd be, anything that you wanna close down completely, that's the paragraph it should go in.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you guys what, I have wrestled with this one in particular. So you know what, I'm gonna be the bad guy right now, and I'm gonna call for a motion just to stop hair salons.
Be hair salons plus.
Anywhere you can get your hair cut. I don't know if that's overreaching or whatever.
What
but I-
about if somebody does nails? They don't do.
I think we need to look at, okay, let me back up 1 second. Jody, are you there? I think, okay. Okay, some of the other ordinances and some of the things I've looked at, they lump all that in with like day spas, nail salons, tattoo parlors,
That's what North Dakota just did.
and that type of stuff. So, if you guys wanna take that where we're talking about direct physical contact, in that, haircuts, yeah, whatever, like I said. I guess on that one, I'll be the bad guy and I'll just call for a motion, we add that into paragraph 1.
Would it be easier or more inclusive if in number 5, we already passed to amend it to include where it is not possible to maintain physical separation of at least 6 feet between persons? Could we put or between the 10 people and that rule? So that it would say all other retail and service businesses in which more than 10 people are gathered or permitted to gather in the facility, or where it is not possible to maintain physical separation of at least 6 feet between persons, are directed to close and cease operations.
Well, we just heard the legal man say if we're gonna do it, let's do it in paragraph 1.
What you're talking about, it's broader than what?
I think you made a motion on the floor, Mr. Mayor.
No, I didn't make the motion, I called for a motion, and right now we don't have a motion, we're
Okay,
kind of just.
I'll support
Okay.
your motion.
Okay, just hold on 1 second.
If you're going to close a specific type of business like hair salons, it would go into 1. What she's suggesting, the way I understand what she's suggesting is, if any kind of business that you can't keep 6 feet separation would be closed. So we're not saying just hair salon, we're saying, what Jade's saying, anything where you can't maintain 6 feet separation is closed. So, like say my office, I usually sit 4 feet across the desk from somebody. If I can't move them out 2 more feet, then I'm closed. That's what you're getting at, Jade?
Right, right. And I'm just trying to address the issue of there's hair salons, there are nail salons, there are places in town that do tattoos out of their home even. If they're not able to stay 6 feet away from somebody and do their job, then how can we allow that to operate? If what we're trying to do is reduce the spread of this, and like Jody said, it spreads so easily through contact.
So if we did that, we would get rid of this whole 10-person concept, throw that out the door, and just say everybody that can't be 6 feet apart is closed. Whether you got 10 people or 2 people or 30 people, you gotta be 6 feet apart. And that's basically what you're saying.
Is that what she's saying, or is that what I'm saying is,
Be specific.
number one, is the specific business like that.
Yeah, what you're saying is there's only certain businesses that are gonna close. Okay, the rest of them, it really doesn't matter whether they're closed or not, and we don't have to worry about 6 feet, like say for these guys, they're just certain businesses. You're gonna have to be all-inclusive then and identify every business that you want closed, that we haven't otherwise worked through with either the 10 people or the 6 feet separation on it.
Well, and I'm thinking getting your hair cut, getting a tattoo, which I do believe we have an ordinance on tattoo parlors anyway. So I think you gotta have a tattoo shop license.
That's completely separate from this.
Well, that's a
though.
whole nother issue. So yeah, I mean, if somebody's doing it out of their house, then they got a whole nother set of issues to worry about. But I think what Jody's getting at and what I'm getting at is, yeah, you're
Physical
standing right
contact.
next to somebody, trimming their nails, cutting their hair, putting a tattoo on them. You're probably getting blood on you if you're putting a tattoo on them. So,
You know, Mr. Mayor, I'm gonna second that. For one, you're not being the bad guy. You're in your chair. You're trying to protect our town, and that was the right decision that you made there. We got the elderly people that go and get their hair done. You know, they're really highly susceptible to getting that. So I second that.
okay, I have a motion and a second.
Would you-
Hang on, Curtis, go ahead.
But, we're gonna have to be specific when we write this down before that motion, aren't
Right,
we?
what's the motion?
Yeah, what are we going to,
The motion I made is to close all hair salons and tattoo shops,
barbers,
barbers,
And nail salons?
nail salons.
waxing,
Who?
waxing stuff, tanning, is that all?
Should cover it all.
I mean, just throwing it out there, I don't know.
Okay. Did you hear what Curtis said, Tony?
Yeah, well, we could add those, I guess, basically, I think you would start looking at, if you, these, what do you want to call it, rehabilitation things that they go through, because they're in close contact too. Exercise places,
Okay, that's already in,
That's already
what is it?
yeah, that's already in number 2, health
Oh,
clubs,
okay.
athletic facilities and theaters. So I think what got left out, and I've wrestled with this, and I've had a few phone calls on it, is the hair salons, and you know, I think Randy just, you know, kinda hit home on that. You're standing right there cutting on somebody's hair, things like that, and then what Jody kinda followed up with on people being in there, and now you're transferring. It kinda goes back to what I said, now you got people going in all different directions, carrying something they don't know what they're carrying.
Okay.
So we do have a motion, we do have a second, you have everything written down. Is there any more discussion? Okay, I'm gonna ask Heather to call the roll.
O'Connell,
Yes.
Yellow Boy,
Yep,
Carlson,
Yes.
Mound,
Yes.
Landrieu,
Yes.
Reichert.
Yes.
So what exactly?
We added hair salons, nail salons, tattoo shops, to paragraph 1.
Yeah, all these-
Barbershops, hair salons,
Nail,
Nail what?
nail salons
salon?
and tattoo
Okay.
parlors, I guess you can call them.
And again, I'll bring this.
barbershops.
Barbershops, yeah.
Okay,
And again, I'll apologize again to everyone, I'm just taking this very, very, very slow, cause we're dealing with some impacting situations. All right, now, I'm gonna bring us back to number 6. With the hair salon and all that type of discussion, how do we feel about everything listed in what Rick brought up. Because we're talking about maintaining space, we're talking about maintaining these types of things.
Are you talking about the addition of 6A?
Yeah, I'm back to 6A
Okay.
now.
I think it's necessary. I think it clarifies things a little bit more.
Okay. And again, what I'm looking at, you have something out the rodeo grounds or whatever, where we asking Sean to go out there and say,
You need to get 6 feet away from somebody. Yeah,
well,
it's-
so what, again, it makes it very hard to enforce, because I just feel like we keep falling back into what somebody else is recommending, what somebody else is putting as a guideline. And I mean, you know, and on the hair salon thing, we pretty much all came together with some pretty hardcore things. I'm not saying that this doesn't need to be considered and that type of stuff, but
Basically, this is just saying that you can't gather.
here's a question, are we even looking at, and I'll say it too, I'll probably get beat up when I walk out of here. But if this stuff is still going in July 4th, what are we gonna do? Because you're talking about the 75th rodeo.
Hello?
I mean, this
Might have to postpone it.
is a very, very hardcore decision, people.
Somebody will have to pay for an expensive Zoom meeting.
So, that's what I say, I don't want us to just rush into this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that July is that it's a big rodeo. It's
It's a huge month.
it's a
It's economic
landmark
impact.
one, but at the same time, if
But-
you want to be around to see number 76, we need to
Yes.
we need to put that in place. I mean, it's to where we can't gather unless you have proper spacing. And I mean, and that's the thing too, it comes back to about the same things with the bars. I mean, the bars could have 10 people in there, they could set their chairs 6 feet apart.
Here's another.
There's alcohol involved though. At the rodeo, there's alcohol involved there as well. You would, I mean, after a few beers are consumed, it's kind of a lot easier to let other concerns go to the wayside. I really think that we can't allow those types of gatherings to happen. And it's the same thing, granted, alcohol's not involved at most funerals, but it's the same situation. It's unfortunate, but at this time, you can't get that many people together.
Question.
Okay, Tony?
I guess maybe this is kind of for Rick too. If we say that the rodeo cannot go on in July unless this virus is curbed, could they come back and ask permission to have the rodeo by the council, and we give permission to have the rodeo?
Well, while Rick's on his way to the podium, I'm gonna throw this out there. Right now, all the city buildings are closed. And I believe they were talking about having a lot of the rodeo festivities and a lot of festivities in a city building that we've already ordered closed coming up in July. So I realize this particular proposal says rodeo grounds. But again, we're back to, you know, why'd we close the facilities? And we're looking at the rodeo grounds, it's kind of the same thing.
Well, that's what I was saying. Is there anything that if we pass this, that let's say this virus is curbed and everything starts reducing, and if we say they can't have the rodeo in July, but the rodeo committee could come back and say, hey, it curbed and this is where we're at, we have our rodeo.
Like in August or
If
something?
if that is the case, we'll have this repealed then. If the virus is gone and, I mean, we're not gonna keep everything closed after the virus is gone, or at least going on the downhill slide.
Tony, to answer that question, if you look at paragraph numbered 8, it says, "This ordinance shall remain in effect until such time as it is amended, suspended, reinstated, or repealed by resolution of the Mobridge City Council." So if there is a circumstance such as that, and the council determines that they want to make an exception for it, they have the authority to do that, whether it's that or any other circumstance that comes up, the council can deal with it and make an amendment or deal with it appropriately. You know, this is the first time that anybody's ever had to write these kinds of ordinances, and so we don't know what we're missing until they happen. So this gives us the authority to make those amendments or changes. Now, it could be, if this whole COVID-19 gets to a point where it's in, say, remission, we should say, the council can suspend it. And my recommendation would be, most likely at the time, is if you don't want it, enforce this, let's suspend it, let's not repeal it, just suspend it, and then if things stay on that track, eventually you can repeal it and let it go away. But if you just suspend it, then you can reinstate it right away by a resolution, and it's quicker, if we have an upturn again. So there's a lot of flexibility. Once you get an ordinance passed, there's a lot of flexibility on amending, changing, terminating, suspending, reinstating it.
I was just saying something about like parades and stuff too, that would have to be fall under that as well.
6 foot spacing, yep, that's one of the things I hadn't thought about, but it would fit under this paragraph 6 that we've added here. Any of those kinds of things that happen, you're gonna be putting those groups, even if it's not a business, those groups basically on the same level as what you guys have agreed to put the retailers on with the 6 foot spacing.
And again, we're sitting here on March 30th and we're talking about 4th of July. We're talking about rodeos, we're talking about huge gatherings of crowds, and those things we don't know. And if I'm understanding this right, if we approve 6A, we're saying all those things can happen if they maintain 6 feet based on Chief Sean's enforcement. I guess I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that when we're sitting here addressing a public health issue on March 30th.
I feel
That's
like
my
it's
thoughts
just
and feelings right
extending
there.
from, I feel like it's extending from 5 saying that communal gatherings are affected by this as well, not just businesses. So I feel like it's saying that if you have 10 or more people, I mean, you're not gonna be 6 feet apart at the rodeo. You're not gonna be 6 feet apart at the parade. You're not gonna be 6 feet apart at a funeral. I feel like it's just saying that you can't get together and have this massive gathering just because you're not a business. I feel like it's just extending it a little bit more to more occasions.
And another thing not put in there, weddings,
Well, weddings would be covered under that.
you know.
Okay, got another question.
Okay, go ahead, Tony.
Mr. Mayor, you know, I was just thinking, maybe it was already addressed, but I didn't hear anything yet. I guess I wasn't thinking about it, but we just hired a swimming pool employees. What about the swimming pool?
It's closed.
Well, see, and that, it goes
Under
back to what I
2.
brought up on, Sure How, those are all city facilities, so we've closed them,
Yeah,
period.
But it falls
End-
under
end
number
of
2 as well.
discussion.
but we just hired the employees. What are we gonna do about them? I mean,
Well, my initial thought is we hired them, but we pay them by the hour, so if we don't have any way, we're not scheduling them to come in and work, right now they're not working, so I don't think they've been officially laid off, but right now the pool is probably gonna be closed as we get closer to that day. I don't really know,
okay.
so,
There's a lot of unknowns right at the moment.
there's more unknowns than there are knowns, how's that?
Right.
Okay,
Well, I would make a motion to add 6A as it is written in the proposed amendments. Do I need to read the whole thing?
yeah, go
Okay.
ahead and read it.
Paragraph 6, because you got the first part of that paragraph.
Okay, paragraph 6. Effective at 12 o'clock a.m. on April 2nd, 2020, it shall be unlawful for any person, entity, organization, or club to participate in or permit a communal gathering as defined herein, which prohibition shall be governed by the following terms. For the purposes of this ordinance, a communal gathering is any indoor or outdoor gathering of people, not specifically identified above, subject to the exceptions and clarifications below, where 10 or more people are located in an enclosed area where there is not clearly marked and identifiable space to have physical separation of at least 6 feet between persons who are not immediately family members or members of the same household, including but not limited to office space, business facility, building or similar confined space, single-family residence, residential apartment units, livestock sale location, and rodeo grounds.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Jay just read her motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Was that you, Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, second by Alondro. Okay. Any more discussion? Okay, go ahead and call the roll, Heather.
Yellow Boy,
Yep.
Carlson,
Yes.
Mound,
Yes.
Landrieu,
Yes.
Reichert,
Yes.
O'Connell,
Yes.
Okay, moving down the list, we've already addressed the issue of childcare. 7B says motel rooms. Okay, I'm sorry. Paragraph 7, let me find my old ordinance. The old ordinance, let's see, the ordinance shall remain in effect. Wait, did you put something else in here, Rick?
6.
Okay.
6 was
On the
added, so we moved
proposal,
it
it's
down.
number 7.
Yes.
On the old one, you
Yeah,
have motel rooms and room service in motels.
Yeah, the ones that were accepted, that didn't apply to any prohibition, it talked about room service in motels.
Okay.
And I think that was, if you're gonna order some food, they're gonna deliver it to the motel. But I got thinking motel rooms, you're gonna have more than 10 people in the motels. That's one facility. So then you're dealing with that whole issue. If you exempt out that we don't have to worry about motel rooms themselves. If they have 30 people in the motel, they're not having to get identifiable spaces and all that. So I just wanted to make it clear that the motels didn't have to worry about all this other stuff if they're gonna, for their rooms. Now, if they got a restaurant, the restaurant's gotta be closed under the first paragraph 1.
Question, lobby too, would you have to close lobby if they can't maintain? If there's a motel with a lobby?
If it has a lobby that's going to be able to hold 10 people or more, then they gotta have the space.
Okay, and if it doesn't, then that lobby has to be closed in the motel, but not the rooms themselves.
Yeah. So they just basically are just not gonna let more than 10 people into their lobby, because the lobby closed, you're out of business, so.
Okay. Any more discussion on that one? Okay, I guess I will call for a motion to make the clarifications.
So moved.
Second.
Gene,
Yes, who's that?
excuse me, can I ask a question yet?
Is this Randy?
Yes.
Okay, yes, go ahead, Randy.
What about graduation? Graduation, I should say.
Did you hear that, Rick? He asked, what about
That's a communal
graduations?
gathering.
Go to that paragraph 6.
6A,
Okay,
yep.
So that's gonna come under 6A.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, anything else? Do we have a motion and a second?
I
Okay,
do.
go ahead and call the roll then.
Carlson,
Yes.
Mound,
Yes.
Landrieu,
Yes.
Reichert,
Yes.
O'Connell,
Yes.
Yellow Boy,
Yep.
Okay, that looks like all the highlights, that looks like all the proposals, there's been a few additions, okay? Now, we went through everything step by step. Made motions to do everything, so now with all of that put together, I believe if this meeting is going to go right, now, we need to have an approval of the second reading of ordinance number 982 with everything that we've just discussed for the last hour and a half.
I'll
Okay.
make a motion to,
So, is everybody on board with everything that just got discussed, approved? Okay,
Yes.
okay. Then I will look for a motion to approve the second reading.
I'll make a motion to approve the second reading of ordinance 982 as
Okay.
amended.
We need to read it.
Okay,
Second.
okay, hold on, Randy. Rick says we need to read it.
He does not have to read the preamble where it's got
Okay.
all the whereases, because that's really not part of the ordinance, that's just the justification. But
Okay.
where it starts now, therefore, from there, you're gonna have to read that whole paragraph one again, and then add in barber shops, hair salons, nail salon, and tattoo parlors in that. And then the rest of it, I think, just follows what was already highlighted.
Okay, bear with me, I'm writing this. Hair salons, barber shops, nail salons, tattoo parlors.
Barber shops.
Okay, I got barber shops. What, did I miss anything, Heather?
Nope.
I got hair salons, barber shops, nail salons, tattoo parlors. Okay. Okay, let me take a drink. Okay, so the motion on the floor and the second is to approve the following. Effective at 12 a.m., April 2nd, 2020, all restaurants, food courts, food service locations, coffee houses, bars, breweries, distilleries, wineries, clubs, cafes. I'm gonna put hair salons, barber shops, nail salons, tattoo parlors, and other similar places of public accommodation offering food and beverages for on-site consumption, including any alcohol licenses with on-sale privileges, are closed to on-site sale and patrons. These businesses may continue to operate in order to provide takeout, delivery, curbside service, drive-through service. Any business continuing to operate in order to provide off-site service should implement procedures to ensure social distancing and operate in compliance with federal and state guidance in order to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Number 2, effective 12 a.m., April 2nd, 2020, all churches, recreational facilities, public pools, health clubs, athletic facilities, and theaters, including movie theaters and music entertainment venues, are directed to close and cease operations. Okay, that's the end of one paragraph, Heather. The computer's talking to us again. Okay. Effective at 12 a.m. on April 2nd, 2020, all hookah lounges, cigar bars, vaping lounges, or other similar businesses which allow for on-site consumption are directed to cease allowing on-site consumption, but may continue to offer products for sale to consume off-site under the same conditions as bars and restaurants outlined in paragraph 1. Effective at 12 a.m. on April 2nd, 2020, all pool halls, video game arcades, video lottery, casino operations, indoor recreational or entertainment are directed to close and cease operations. Okay, now number 5, this is where some changes happen, but I'm gonna read them. Effective 12 a.m., April 2nd, 2020, all other retail and service businesses in which more than 10 people are gathered or permitted to gather in a facility where it is not possible to maintain physical separation of at least 6 feet between persons are directed to close and cease operations. Number 6, effective at 12 a.m. on April 2nd, 2020, it shall be unlawful for any person, entity, organization, or club to participate in or permit a communal gathering, enclosed in quotations, as defined herein, which prohibition shall be governed by the following terms. A, for purposes of this ordinance, a, quote, communal gathering, closed quotes, is any indoor or outdoor gathering of people not specifically identified above, subject to the exceptions and clarifications below, where 10 or more people are located in an enclosed area where there is not clearly marked an identifiable space to have physical separation of at least 6 feet between persons who are not immediate family members or members of the same household, including but not limited to office space, business facility, building or similar confined place, single-family residence, residential apartment unit, livestock sales locations, and rodeo grounds. Number 7, the prohibitions and closures in this order do not apply to the following businesses: places of public accommodation that offer food and beverages for off-site consumption, including grocery stores, food markets, and service businesses in which less than 10 people are gathered or permitted to gather in the facility, child daycares, pharmacies, drugstores, and food pantries other than any portion of such businesses which would be subject to the requirements of paragraph number 1. Sub B, motel rooms and room service in motels. Okay, the rest of it is a repeat, but we'll do her. Number C, sub C, healthcare facilities, residential care facilities, congregate care facilities, and correctional facilities. Sub D, crisis shelters, homeless shelters, soup kitchens, or other institutions. Sub E, municipal airport. Sub F, any emergency facilities for the response, let me back up. Sub F, any emergency facilities necessary for the response to the current public health emergency or any other community emergency disaster. Number 8, this ordinance shall remain in effect until such time as amended, suspended, reinstated, or repealed by resolution of the Mobridge City Council. Number 9, any violation of this ordinance is subject to the general penalty provisions applicable to all other violations of the city ordinance, Mobridge City ordinances. Number 10, this ordinance shall apply to all persons, facilities, and locations within the city of Mobridge and within 1 mile of the corporate limits of the city of Mobridge. Number 11, each day a violation of this ordinance is allowed to occur and considered a separate offense committed by the person or persons in charge of the facility in violation. Be it further ordained that pursuant to South Dakota Codified Law 9-19-13, this ordinance is necessary due to a health emergency, the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, safety, and welfare of the city, and shall become effective immediately upon passage and publication. So that is the ordinance in its entirety. And we have a motion and a second.
I do not have a second.
Oh, you do not have a second?
No.
Okay.
I second.
Was that Randy? Okay. So we have a motion. We have a second. Call the roll.
Carlson,
Yes.
Gilliboy,
Yep.
O'Connell,
Yes.
Reichert,
Yes.
Landrieu,
Yes.
Mound.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. All right. We'll move us to number 3 on the agenda. We're changing gears a little bit here. It says approval for funds for a local grant program. Just give me 1 second here. Okay, this goes back to what Heather and I had been talking about and some other things on the economic impacts of what we're doing and what we're closing. So I guess with that being said, Heather, do you want to talk on a little bit, or do you
Yep.
just want me to keep going?
Nope.
Okay,
What's been rolling around in my thoughts the last few days is the economic impact on these businesses that are having to close completely. What I had been thinking about is a way to assist, and I know that the feds came out with a bunch of money, but it takes a long time for that stuff to trickle down and get to the people that really need it. And the reality is these folks are paying bills right now. It's not 6 months from now. So I had a conversation with Michelle at Economic Development on Friday, kind of just off the cuff idea, threw it at her, and she jumped at the idea as well. If we were to have some type of local assistance program, grant program, loan program for these businesses that are affected by closure. So I don't have the details lined out yet. What I'm asking for you guys for tonight is if you're open to the idea, knowing that it is gonna cost city funds. I don't have a dollar amount for that yet, but I know that Michelle and I would like to get together and figure out a program. It would be an application type program, so if you're affected by the closures, you would apply. You have to show your financials. Michelle would probably take care of that end of it, and then we could possibly come up with some type of assistance program, because we all know that we cannot, Mobridge cannot afford for any more businesses to close. I'm fearful with this, and so is Michelle, that some of these smaller businesses may not be able to survive 2 months of being closed, 3 months of being closed. So I guess I would ask the council if they would be willing to allow me to pursue this idea, and to possibly come back later and ask you for city funds to assist our local businesses.
This is what I've talked to you guys about. And again, if this is approved, this is not a release of funds, it's not a guarantee of funds. It's just, this gives Heather something to sit down at the table with, instead of having to come back and forth several times to the council for these types of things. So this would give Heather the ability to say, hey, I'm bringing X, Y, Z to the table. What do you guys have? And that's really it. Like I said, we're not releasing funds, we're not spending any money, we're not doing any of that.
Right now.
So, at this point, so.
I will expect to spend money once we get some idea of the needs that are out there.
So are there
I
any,
make a motion to.
Okay.
I'll second that
allow
motion.
her to do it.
okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any more discussion on this? Any questions?
And this isn't just businesses that have to close completely that will be allowed. It'll be allowed any business that's affected by
Yeah,
this.
the concept I have is like, even if you have to reduce your business, like say you're a full-fledged restaurant and then all of a sudden you're doing takeout, maybe your revenue is cut down by half and you still have that other half of bills to pay. So this is just ensuring that these folks can pay their utilities, they can get their loans paid for if they're not forgiven, just to help them get through this. And I would also like to add that part of my thought process is that if eventually they do get FEMA money or state money or whatever trickles down, that this then immediately turns into a loan. So they can't get federal funds and get city funds. If they get something from the feds, then this turns into a loan, interest-free, you have to pay it back. But that's more details to be worked out as we get into it. I'm just asking for permission to proceed. I think Michelle was gonna get her board together sometime this week and get their input or permission to move forward with this, but as of right now, she was on board.
To just, to give them a little boost, the boost that they might need.
Just to be able to pay their bills.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any more discussion? Okay, Heather, call the roll.
Yellow Boy,
Yep.
O'Connell,
Yes.
Reichert,
Yes.
Landrieu,
Yes.
Mound,
Yes.
Carlson.
Yes.
Okay, that brings us up to adjournment, so I guess I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Did you get that? Okay.
I just pick one.
Call the roll, please.
O'Connell,
Yes.
Reichert,
Yes.
Landrieu,
Yes.
Mound,
Yes.
Carlson,
Yes.
Yellow Boy.
Yep.
Okay, meeting is adjourned.